The Vietnam War took a big toll on a lot of soldiers. Most of the men that were drafted did not want to go to war, and therefore were unprepared for some of the things that they would encounter. As a result, many soldiers would get post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The Department of Veteran Affairs states that most soldiers will get PTSD after killing someone or being sent down into the Vietnamese tunnels where they could be ambushed. 15% of all returning veterans were diagnosed with serious cases of PTSD. Others would report some small symptoms, but they would be able to go on and live a normal life.
My name is Don Cosman. I'm a Navy veteran who served the U.S. Navy from 1968 to 1972. Most of my duty stations were in Italy and Greece and here in the Washington, D.C. area. I've dealt with, for myself, it has been alcohol, but with PTSD, a lot of my friends that were with me, stationed with me, or who I met in these later years have been affected through not being able to hold jobs, dealing with alcohol and drugs and homelessness. And even though I try to help while I do my job, because I'm downtown DC 5 days a week, it's very difficult for people to understand how something that was called shell shock or battle fatigue in World War II was actually an actual condition that you sometimes could not get the help for. My story started when actually I was 12 years old, stealing my dad's beer, getting into trouble. As the Vietnam era came about and my draft card came, I knew I had to enlist because I was afraid to die. But the alcoholism didn't stop. It actually was exacerbated by knowing that any day I could have gone to Vietnam. I enlisted, ended up in Naval Air Station Andrews, and ended up in West Virginia. And then my best friend was killed in Vietnam, and the drinking got harder. I went overseas, went to Italy and Greece, and I don't remember half of those days.
The Department of Veteran Affairs states that many soldiers out of the Vietnam War were alcoholic and had major alcohol problems.
But when we came home, not only weren't we received very well, a lot of employers would reason I was part of the Vietnam era, so I may snap at any time. So I got very low-paying jobs, menial, because they didn't want to deal, because they knew of the previous employees that they've had that were from the Vietnam War, were actually in Vietnam, were causing trouble in the workplace. But because they weren't getting the help they needed, they would just fire them.
The National Institute of Mental Health states that most studied medications for treating PTSD include antidepressants, which may control PTSD symptoms such as sadness, worry, anger, and feeling numb inside. They also say that psychotherapy is the main treatment for PTSD. Psychotherapy is when the patient talks through the event that caused PTSD, and then the therapist helps give them a new way to react to frightening events that trigger their symptoms.